Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Project Flux podcast. Today we've actually got something quite different and quite special. We're doing our first Project Flux live, and this comes from a session that we did back at the end of September with Overbury, where I was lucky enough to be asked to talk on a panel session all around the future of AI. So I was joined by Sean Betts from Omnicom Media and Paul Thorpe from Okana, alongside our hosts, Michelle Sharman and Emma Keys from Overbury. So what I thought we'd do today, with Yoshi being on holiday, is just air that entire session, which included a few presentations from each of us and a really, really good discussion. I actually learned a lot from this session, so I hope you all will too. So all that remains to be said is, as always, to shout out for our sponsors, Construct AI, who helps us keep this show on the road. Do check out their product. It's fantastic, and you can get access and a free trial through the link in the show notes. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed taking part.
Project Flux is here.
Right, so AI, obviously it's huge. We were really keen to do this session, and it's a topic I think that can be quite overwhelming at times for all of us. There's questions around our job stability. For me, I always think about the future and my kids and, what kind of jobs are they going to be doing? So that's a big question. And then there's environmental questions, and it's big on the kind of global political stage now as well. So there's loads of stuff that we can talk about, and I'm sure we're going to cover quite a lot. Our speakers have kindly agreed to stick to a Petra format, which is quite brave of them. Hopefully it's going to go okay. They've all just got 20 slides, 20 seconds per slide, just to keep the presented content really punchy, and then hopefully we'll have some time for some really good questions and things afterwards. So I'm looking forward to it. I think, for me as a kind of 40-something-year-old woman, Instagram is telling me that all I do is use ChatGPT like Google, whilst Gen Z are making millions in their sleeps. I'm looking forward to getting some tips, and hopefully our experts here can set the record straight. So I'll just introduce you quickly, and then you can introduce yourselves properly during your slides. So we have, up first, we've got Sean Betts, a friend of mine from university actually, but also the Chief AI and Innovation Officer from Omnicom Media Group. And then we've got Paul Thorpe, Digital Director from Okana, but also a co-author of one of the chapters of the CIOB AI Playbook from last year. And then James Garner, Head of AI and Digital Data at Leeds, podcaster, and something to do with Rick. So that's it. I think we'd let the experts do the talking. So I'm going to hand over Petra style to Sean.
Awesome.
So I think...
Hello, everyone. So I'm Sean, Chief AI and Innovation Officer at Omnicom Media Group. We're a big marketing organisation. Globally, we work with hundreds of different clients across all sorts of advertising, whether that's kind of PR and digital and traditional stuff. So I wanted to start off just by sharing this from Alan Turing. So Alan Turing, very famous British scientist, he kind of came up with the concept of AI, and he had the idea that instead of building a brain, we should try and attempt to build a mind with technology. So he didn't think of it as databases, he thought of it as something that could think. And that's really what we're starting to see now. And AI has been kind of evolving for over 75, 80 years, starting with kind of Turing's work all the way through to kind of the transformer architecture, which is really what underpins all of ChatGPT and the generative AI models that we have now. It was invented by Google, and ChatGPT came out in November 2022. So we've had it for nearly 3 years now. But AI, as a discipline, it's a field of computer science. As you can see here, it's all about getting computers to perform tasks associated with human intelligence. So that could be anything from pattern matching to kind of decision making and planning. And the thing about AI is that it works with two different types of data: structured data, which is stuff you get in spreadsheets, and then unstructured data, which is basically everything else, everything that's really messy in the real world. And it's all the kind of technological progress that AI has made around unstructured data that has led us to get to where we are now with generative AI. I've never seen that build before in my life. That's really interesting. Anyway, AI is getting really, really good at doing lots of different things to a human level. So you can see here, there's lots of different things that AI was trying to do, and it was taking kind of years or decades to get to human level. Since 2015, those lines have been vertical, and progress has been in kind of weeks and months to get to human level, not in kind of weeks and decades anymore. So AI is getting really, really good at lots of things. But generative AI is a very, very different type of technology. This is the definition from the World Economic Forum. It's really a technology that generates content, whether that's text, images, video, audio. And it's unlike any kind of technology that we've really had before, which is why it's causing so much kind of interest and disruption. But the first thing to say is there is a foundational technology. This is like the internet, this is like mobile phones. This is going to seep into every part of business. Every type of software will be built around generative AI models in the future. And we're kind of just going through that transition now, and it will take a few years. And that's why it's going to be so disruptive, I think, between now and probably 2030. But ChatGPT really kicked this off. It launched in November 2022. It was the fastest growing consumer technology we'd ever seen. 100 million users in the first 2 months without any kind of advertising. It was all through kind of word of mouth and people sharing what they've been doing with the platform. And probably now we're entering the kind of early majority adopting this. It used to be people in the tech industry, people in the marketing industry, people who are kind of into geeky stuff. Now it's really getting into the early majority, and ChatGPT has 700 million unique users a week now. It's the 5th biggest website in the world. Sam Altman wants it to be the #1 website in the world and kind of dethrone Google in the next couple of years. And people use it for lots of different things. They use it for search, they use it for facts, they use it for summarizing things, kind of finding new products, doing research on travel recommendations, even asking kind of health questions. There's been a lot of controversy around people using it for kind of mental health issues as well, which is a bit of a challenge because it is not really designed for that, but it can be quite useful. And I think it's fair to say that these platforms are now becoming the kind of gateway to the internet in the same way that we've all used Google to access things online in the last 15, 20 years. ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, Claude, they're all becoming these gateways to the internet where people are using it to do things online. And that's leading to what I think of as the kind of 4th generation of the internet. Kind of the first generation was very static. We then had user-generated content. The second generation, third generation's all been algorithmic and predictive. This is where we transition from the internet being something that humans use to something that AI kind of uses on our behalf. And that means that people are going to be using a lot more of these AI platforms going forward, and it's going to be enabled by more sophisticated, what are called AI agents. So AI platforms can actually do things for you online. And these are just kind of starting to come through into consumers' hands. So this is just some examples of those AI agents in action. Deep learning is something from OpenAI, and all the other models have a version of this. This was released in February this year. Comet's a browser for Perplexity, ChatGPT agent, Claude in Chrome were all released literally in the last kind of 2 or 3 months. These are AI agents that work in a web browser and can do things online for you, whether that is searching or shopping or finding products or planning things and then executing that plan on your behalf. So it's a really, really interesting space. This is the technology at the kind of cutting edge, and consumers are starting to adopt this quite quickly, mostly in the US now. Some of it hasn't come to Europe yet because we have kind of different regulations. And this slide isn't moving on, is it? Because it's been way more than 20 seconds. Why don't I click and see what happens? I think it's because the videos are playing. Let's go. Okay. So Web 4.0 is kind of underpinned by 3 things. Zero-click search, zero-click browsing, and zero-click purchasing. But these models aren't just affecting people's online lives, it's affecting people's working lives as well. Lots of research done around this by Harvard Business School. What it shows is that people using AI are faster, better, and more equal. So people who haven't got as much experience can do work at the level of some more experienced people using AI. So it's a bit of a leveler of people's capabilities. And there's some companies making some really kind of bold moves using AI. So Procter & Gamble are looking at AI as a teammate. Estee Lauder have adopted OpenAI's GPTs across their entire business, including a lot of their scientific research. Klarna have used AI to present their financial earnings calls. Vodafone using it in their customer service platform. But how businesses adopt AI is really, really important. It's all about the mindset that they have. These platforms are blank chat screens. They don't come with a manual. It takes about 10 hours of using this stuff for it to kind of really click as to how you should use it and to use it more regularly. And you have to be collectively learning as an organization because there is no top-down use cases that can be easily identified. And what I think brilliant looks like is having a clear strategy, making sure you're being true to your values, setting up a task force, putting clear policy and guidelines in place, making sure everyone has training and allowing them to go hands-on with these tools and really experience it for themselves and work out how it can help them in their specific role. And just to kind of finish up, I'd say that AI is not going to replace people, it is just a tool. But someone who is absolutely brilliant at using these platforms in a work context probably will replace you if you're not leaning in and you're not learning and you're not using this stuff. So please do, because it's really important and it's going to change how we all work.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Paul Thorpe. I'm from a company called Okana. I'm going to be covering AI in construction, the potential applications. And to frame the conversation, I'm going to do what's now and what's next with AI in the construction industry. So I think everyone will agree with any sort of new technology goes through an adoption timeline. And with AI, I think a lot of people are finding themselves at this point where they're starting to not really understand how is it going to affect their business. There's environmental considerations that people are also really thinking about. And it's sort of that question of when are we actually going to reach this productivity plateau? I think everyone will agree with any sort of new technology goes through an adoption timeline. And with AI, I think a lot of people are finding themselves at this point where they're starting to not really understand how is it going to affect their business. There's environmental considerations that people are also really thinking about. And it's sort of that question of when are we actually going to reach this productivity plateau? But where could we be? Construction has typically been quite a slow industry to adopt change and new technology. So could AI actually be the thing that really unlocks the potential in the industry and builds that new sustainable infrastructure of the Back in 2024, yep, this is the slide. Back in 2024, I was asked to contribute to the CIOB AI playbook covering the why, what and how of AI in construction. My chapter focused on the practical implementation of AI within the industry, and I broke it down into three categories: analytics, generation and automation, which I'll go through in a moment. So already there's analytics tools out there that can monitor site CCTV, analyse when people are breaking the rules, going into exclusion zones and providing that feedback loop to their companies so they can understand which individuals are causing those non-compliances. Next slide. But where could we get to? So imagine one AI model that was fed live updates from your design, your procurement and your site works, and that was able to predict whether the job would be delivered on time, on budget. Every client would want access to one of these to understand where they were on design and construction of a job. Next slide, please. Okay, and then generation. Where are we now with generation? Already there exists parametric tools where designers can plug in variables, constraints of a job, and they can get multiple design options in seconds, all by messing around with those constraints. Next one. But then in terms of where could we get to with generation? With the advancements of AI in both the design, in coming up with new building materials, new building methods of the future, are we about to see a brand new form of architecture and construction hit the industry, something that even Zaha Hadid can't dream of yet? Next slide. And then the last part of the chapter was automation. So this is all about robotics. Example, if the video plays as well, is an example in China where they're testing on-site robotics to do construction works. So already companies like, the manufacturing industry has adopted it. Amazon has got delivery drones, going to deliver all your orders soon. And construction is following suit, where you've got on-site robotics carrying out site works in a controlled environment. And then next slide, please. Again, where could we get to? Where could we get to? So with construction facing an issue with workforce retiring out of the industry, could the replacement not be in new generation of workers joining the industry, but actually moving completely to robotics to do site works? Could a construction site of the future be very silent, except for machines just busy humming away and working? Next slide. Okay, so question that a lot of people may have already is, will AI take my job? It's something that was already discussed. So the question is, will AI take your work, take your job away? I think the honest truth is AI is going to be an enabler for all of the tasks that we typically do on a day-to-day basis. It's going to help us deliver our work, not replace us entirely. So to adopt any AI system, there needs to be a level of trust. Certain tasks are better performed by individuals, while some other tasks are better performed by people. And there's going to be an understanding of where does that fit in the loop? Where does this task fit on that sort of roadmap? And understanding which person is best to undertake it, and if there's going to be a partnership. The next few slides, I'm going to cover some brand new examples of how AI is being used within the construction industry today. So how are project managers using AI? So an example I've got on screen here is a company called Alice Technologies. This is an AI tool for scheduling and programming. And what it does, it can generate various different programs and analyze which is the best, most manageable critical path, where can they reduce float. It's been used by a contractor group on one of the HS2 tunnel projects, and they saved 3 months of float on the program by using these AI tools to help them deliver their works. And then what about site managers? So at the moment, there's tools like Converge. This is a concrete sensor technology, and Laing O'Rourke used it on the new Everton football stadium. Plugging this into the concrete pours, it analyses the heat and strength of the concrete And because it's got all of that historic data and the machine learning algorithms, it can identify when the best time to strike is. And they were able to save 3 days per pour on the job site. And then lastly, quality managers. So what about quality managers? This one's a little bit of a prototype, but Sheffield University are building a platform that helps quality managers analyse inspections. So this overlays with a construction visor, and a quality manager only needs to look at a piece of work and it gets visual feedback on whether it's compliant with the specs. It's going to be a bit of a framework of how you could look to implement AI within your business or within your practice. So what we've outlined is a needs assessment. So this just goes through the needs. So first step is actually identifying, are you actually trying to solve a real measurable problem with the application of AI? Evaluate, is it something you can do without? Are you getting sidetracked by all the buzz about AI? Experiment, can you pilot small without investing big? Data, one thing to consider is, do you have a good data foundation to actually test your AI model? And then strategy, does it align with your business objectives? Understanding the risks is also a key consideration. So with the adoption of something like AI, you're opening yourself up to a whole range of considerations and risks you need to consider at a business level. So understanding ethical considerations, cybersecurity, contractual conflicts as well. Making sure that you really get a good handle on what the risks are and have a governance plan from day one. A good example I always use is, even if you're not using AI, people in your business are. So understanding what information, potentially confidential, are they uploading to ChatGPT and others. And then finally, in terms of doing a practical step, is looking at what's your strategy with AI? How are you going to pilot it small? What problem is it actually going to solve within the business? And scale from there, rather than trying to bite the whole elephant in one bite. It's piece by piece.
Right, I'm just introducing myself. I'm James Garner, Head of AI at Leeds. My background is as a QS actually. So I spent 20 years, did a lot of work with Overbury as well. So I really understand a lot of the pain points around people in the industry and what we're trying to solve, the problem we're trying to solve. And I see it as a huge opportunity, actually. I see everything around AI as something that we should be embracing. And I'm going to take you through some practical tips over the next sort of 6 minutes or so about how you can actually get started and what it means for you. So the one thing to think about is, even though we're dealing with a very powerful piece of technology, we really have to treat it as almost like another human, like an intern, like the best, smartest intern that you've got, who might not know everything, but it can get trained very, very quickly. So treat it as a thought partner rather than a piece of tech. And that really reinforces the point around AI being all around. We don't want to put a square into a round hole. It's about your strategy first, whether that's your business strategy, whether that's your project strategy, or whether that's your personal strategy. The technology actually comes second, and we don't want to find a way of putting a square into a round hole, like I say. But the way that you use this technology is very, very new. So we need to train ourselves to use it differently. And this is kind of aligns with your trough of disillusionment one, but it's slightly different. And what this says is that everybody's on a different journey. Some of you might have had your light bulb moment, others of you might not have. Some of you might get it during the course today. But the point is, we all go through this familiar journey where we have our reality check, but that's actually very, very healthy, because then that understands what the limitations are. And then I think what we've all got to accept is that things are changing, whether we like it or not. And this quote that the learned will inherit the earth, whilst the learned find themselves equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists, rings as true now as it did when it was written, and it's certainly going to become very true in the next 5 years. We've all got to embrace this change and what it means for us, and what it means for our businesses. And if you look at it like that, it's a huge opportunity. And in the why are we even bothering with this? If all project delivery was fine, we could say we don't need it, but these stats show that only 1 in 200 projects finish on time, on budget, and to the benefits in the business case. And construction productivity got worse between 1997 and 2000. So there's obviously a problem that we're trying to fix, and where this can come in. This is just one study, but what this particular study shows that $16 trillion of GDP growth is going to be through AI. And when you think the built environment is such a huge part of that GDP, we've got a big role to play. All those different factors will make up how it actually implements that GDP growth. And in this room, most of us be professional services or construction, and you can see these kind of levels of productivity gain that we're going to get, at least in its short to medium term, are significant. We'll be getting back between 2 or maybe in 3 days a week to do more value-added tasks, whether that's to our companies or to our clients. But we've got to think bigger than that. So I'm showing a drill because when you go to B&Q and you buy a drill, everyone thinks, well, I'm buying a drill, right? But I would argue that you're not buying a drill, you're actually going into B&Q and you're buying an outcome. And the outcome, if this changes, as you'll see in a minute, is a whole, right? And it's exactly the same with us. You know, nobody buys a construction company or they buy a surveyor, they're buying an outcome. And if we can find a way of using AI to change the way we do things, but come to the same outcome better, cheaper, faster, then that's something we've all got to be thinking about in the longer term. So there's 2 tiers to go. You've got the short, medium term productivity gains in the longer term. And we've got to ask ourselves this question, written by Richard Susskind, an amazing guy. How in the future will we solve the problem to which surveyors, architects, builders are currently our best answer? And that totally reframe the question and get you really thinking about what you should be doing with your business in the next 5 to 10 years' time. But they're not exclusive. You do both together. Take the productivity gains whilst you think about that. And the other thing that you should be aware of, this is nothing new. So you shouldn't be scared. Mikhail Kondratyev, who was a Russian economist, looked at these waves every kind of 40 to 60 years. And we're coming to the end of one wave and onto another wave. And then the only real difference that's happening, you can see these waves here. So, you know, we're coming to the end of the silicon chip age, which most of us are children of. We've all experienced the internet revolution. And we're coming to the start of a new wave. So entirely predictable, and it goes all the way back to 1837, probably before that actually. But the difference is, whilst we had a generation to get used to each of those technological changes, like internet took 17 years, as we heard before, ChatGPT got to this definition of mass adoption in 10 months. So we haven't got time to wait and see what happens and it's someone else's problem, it's the next generation problems, it's our problem, or I'd like to say it's our opportunity. So we've all got to get on the bus. We don't know exactly where the bus is going, as we were talking about before, but we know we've got to be on it. And we're working through these levels to AGI. AGI is artificial general intelligence, but we're very much kind of at level 3 at the moment. So we've gone through the chatbots, we've now got these reasoning models that can do research for us and show us its chain of thought, and now we're now starting to use something called agents. And agents are effectively GPTs or chatbots that perform some kind of action for you at the end. And that means we've all got to change our skill set, because as well as managing a bunch of humans, we're going to have to get used to managing a bunch of AI agents. And it's not, again, mutually exclusive. They're 2 different things, but it means a change to the way that you work. And it can be quite daunting for some people, especially people who've been working in a certain way. But the one thing I will say, this slide from 1979 from IBM holds true now as ever, which is that we need this bookending approach. Human at the beginning, taking responsibility for the brief. Let the AI do the grunt work so that we can take responsibility at the end for the output, whatever the output is. That's a really important principle to stick by. And there's so many opportunities. A lot of you will be familiar with the AI Opportunities Action Plan, and then all the investment that came in last week when Trump did his visit. Huge amounts of investment coming into the UK. We're really well positioned as an economy, even though we're not going to compete with China and America in terms of the implementation. We are right up there, which is fantastic. And within the industry, I was responsible for being on the working group for the RICS responsible use of AI in surveying practice. This has provoked a lot of discussion. Some people disagree with it. Good, it's starting the debate. But this is coming in from March 2026. All firms and all members have to show that they comply with the RICS guide for using AI safely. And then one thing to take away with you all is this CRIT methodology. If you want to get started, always use context, role, ask the AI to interview you and tell it what task you want at the end. I can go through this in more detail for you over drinks afterwards, but that will really take you away from using it as a powerful Google to using it as an AI assistant. And then lastly, that's my podcast and newsletter. If anyone's interested, the reason I do it on behalf of the task force is just to keep everyone updated, because it's moving so fast and I know it can be overwhelming. So the fact that you're here is fantastic, but dive in. It's not going anywhere, this technology. The sooner you dive in, the better placed you'll be.
Right, so we've got a couple of questions, just kind of panel style, but then I'm sure you guys have got lots of questions as well, so we're keen to open it up quite quickly. But the first one I thought I would ask would be, you know, there's a lot of information here and it's, you know, so much to kind of take on board, but what do you guys recommend we can do right now? So when everybody kind of gets back to their desk or whatever they're doing today, what's the kind of one thing they can look to do? I don't know who wants to take. James, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is experiment. You know, the good thing about these tools, you don't need to be a super coder or IT. They're really easy to use. They work with natural language. It's a tool that you can use with natural language. So experiment, dive in. That framework I just gave you, the CRIT framework, is actually really, really good way of getting started, because it will change your relationship. If you've ever used it, you've got to remember, we've spent 25 years being trained how to use Google, and Google works on keywords.
So it was all about reducing the prompt to as little words as possible. And we've all used the prompt, nearest restaurant to here. That's the exact opposite way that these chatbots, you can get the best out of them. They need more context. The more context, the better. You need to tell them what you want it to act as in terms of the role. You need to ask it to interact with you. It's not, if you ever used ChatGPT, got a really bad prompt, you've got a bad response and you give up, that should be the start of the conversation, not the end. You can actually say to it, that doesn't make sense, and have a conversation. And lastly, I think as you said, it's multimodal now. It's just not just text. You can ask for it to bring images back, or tables, or even music or video. So tell it what you want it to produce. And if you're very, very precise with it, you'll get very, very good results.
Thank you. Anything to add?
Yeah, just adding sort of that beginning of the dialogue with something like ChatGPT is when you do a prompt, you can include a line, just ask me any questions that can help you reply to this answer. And it will give you a series of questions, and it will just help flesh out what it's actually thinking about and what it's responding. But yeah, if you really sort of in the dark, it's my role is X, I do this at this company, how do you think I should be using AI in the next year? It's a simple prompt, and see what it comes back with. Because it's even if most of them are not aligned with what you're doing, I think there'll be something in there, some nugget, some gem that you'll go, actually, that's something I could really start to use.
The only other thing I'd add as well, these models are getting really good really quickly. So if you tried to do something even like 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 12 months ago, and it didn't work, try it again now with a new model, and you might be surprised at how well it works. And kind of going back to things that you think don't work is a really good thing to do, because they will start working at some point.
Have you got any recommendations on what we should be using? So the go-to is ChatGPT, isn't it? But there's so many alternatives, and some of us now are restricted on what we can use within our workplaces.
Yeah, they're starting to become, I think, a little bit differentiated. They started off and they're all just chatbots and they could all do similar things, but Anthropic's Claude model, they're much more focused on kind of enterprise use now, and they're really good for coding. ChatGPT is kind of general use, and they kind of release loads of product features. Like they even released one yesterday that helps people make a purchase in ChatGPT. So if you want to kind of see where this is going to go as a technology and all the new features that are coming out, then ChatGPT is really good. Google's Gemini is a bit of a kind of all-purpose one, and if you want to use it for understanding YouTube videos, it's amazing because it has access to all of that content and all of those transcripts. So if you've ever got a question about YouTube, use Google's Gemini. And yeah, I think they're starting to kind of pull apart a bit.
Okay, thank you. And then what we haven't talked about so much with your presentations is the environmental impact, which is something that does seem to come up a lot. I think I remember reading somewhere that just saying please, has a detrimental effect on the environment. I can't remember what the stats were now, but do you guys have any knowledge of that?
It's changing really quickly. The models we have today are 100 times more efficient than the models we had 18 months ago, which means the environmental impact is lower. But at the same time, especially in the US, billions is being poured into building new data centers and new kind of power infrastructure, which is obviously damaging to the environment. But a lot of that investment is actually going into more renewable energy sources. So despite Trump's best efforts, a lot of this is going into kind of rebooting the renewable energy sector in the US. So it's really complicated because it's not just about electricity, it's about water usage and all sorts of other things as well. But I think the general trend is that these models are getting more and more efficient, and once the infrastructure is built out, actually just using them is kind of okay. A lot of that environmental cost comes in the infrastructure and the training of the models in the first place.
And we've gone through a lot of the training. A lot of the environmental considerations were in training, so we've gone through that. And actually, there's a lot of hope, I suppose. And it's a bit like chicken and egg. We're investing a lot in this technology with the hope that eventually this technology will help overcome and solve some of the problems. Can you imagine if this technology ends up solving nuclear fission, or makes the renewable technologies even better or more powerful? So it is a bit of a bet in a lot of ways, but as you said, there's billions upon billions being bet here. But there's some practical things you can do. If a Google search will suffice, use a Google search. There's no point in using them. So there's some things you can do within your organisation or yourself to not put too much pressure on the environmental loads. Don't need it if you don't use it if you don't need to.
Just to add to that, even if you took AI out of the equation, the amount of digital data that people are producing, every dinner that you take a picture of on your phone is being backed up on a few data centres out there. So even if we just ignored AI for the moment, the environmental concerns are still there, and it's, like you said, it's kind of that bet that maybe AI will help us solve these problems that we had even before we all started using ChatGPT to ask sort of inane questions. The problem was still there, and it's just brought it more into the forefront.
Thank you. Shall we open up to questions from anyone else?
Nice. Hi, I'm Peter Ward from King's College. A lot of what you've talked about has been how AI can help us do things that we currently do faster and better and more efficient. I sort of get that. What we do with our sort of projects at the university is largely kind of build new projects or refurbish existing spaces, and that tends to be sort of quite reactive in response to someone wanting a nicer environment or us recruiting a new academic or winning a grant or something like that. Our space then falls into three categories of sort of teaching, the office space and research space. And generally we've got sort of quite good metrics and workspace analysis on the first of those two, so computing space and each square foot and workspace. There's a lot from the commercial sector. But in research, I feel like we don't have the data points that tell us not just what we're doing now, but and it's obviously quite a diverse building utilisation sector, but it's certainly not what we foresee the future to be. We tend to ask academics about that, and just email the team there. Really sort of thinking back the American universities, thinking about how the implications of future research development are likely to impact on what spaces they need for them, because that might be really useful in helping us brief projects in the sense of the answer.
Great question.
I'll start and you can, I mean, I think the main thing is what we know for certain is it's going to change very, very fast. So the ability to be agile and react to what's happening out there, because the way the kind of workforce is going to change over the next 5 years will probably be accelerated even more in terms of research and where we're moving with that. So I think that the main thing would just be make sure that it's future-proof probably isn't a word anymore, because we don't know what the future is going to be. I think it's more about being agile and being really able to react to what's going to happen over the next few years. So for instance, for research, if we end up with more kind of robotics involved, that will probably change the landscape and we need to react to that. There's no definite answer, and it's a bit like I said before, we know the bus is going, we just don't know exactly where it's going, but we just need to be in that position where we change our mindset a little bit and be prepared to react very quickly to changes.
Yeah, I'd kind of double down on that a little bit. The one thing I know about this technology and research right now is that it's massively accelerating research times. So deep learning that I mentioned earlier, it can do the work of a research assistant in an academic setting that would normally take 2 to 3 days in 20 minutes. And that is phenomenally fast. So the idea that you can get through more research faster means, to your point, you need to have more agile spaces, because you just don't know, A, the volume, and B, the variety of what you might be working on. So I think that's probably the best tip you can have right now.
Yeah, I think it was on your slide, all the revolutions of new technology coming in had that sort of long tail of impact. And with AI, it's very much these short bursts, and like I said, we don't actually know which directions. Maybe it is a flexible, option of how do you adapt these spaces on every time there's a change, every time there's a new demand, and not bake yourself into a strategy that may prove to be out of date within a year or in sometimes less time.
And the trouble is we're talking very much here about chatbots and non-physical way. What we haven't really discussed, we discussed it a bit on yours, about humanoid robots and what is called physical AI. So it starts actually affecting how things are done on site, if you like, or in the research. So it's mind-blowing in a way, and there's so many kind of different variables to think about that it's very hard to predict. And even the experts disagree, right? I mean, was it you had the slide up of Bill Gates and all the... Yeah. I mean, they don't all agree, No. They're the people building it.
Hiya, I'm Jen from Deloitte. You showed a couple of examples about how AI might be used in the future for construction, and then obviously, HS2 or Sheffield United. But what other examples do you have, or does anyone in the room have, around the construction industry piloting AI improvement and projects with any clients at the moment? Is anyone doing any of that kind of exploration work?
A big, just a big contractor at the moment that's Laing O'Rourke partnered with Sheffield University's Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre, and they are looking across the spectrum of how do they deliver, how do they engage with clients, and looking at how AI will potentially adapt and change. So the example I showed was the Converge sensors that they're using for concrete pouring. Again, using the historic data of pours, they're able to analyse when a concrete certain mix with certain weather conditions is at a certain strength or temperature, they can strike formwork, and all of that is just how can they get more productivity and how can they increase their sort of workload. And I'd say Laing's are one of the ones that are really leading it at the moment, because they have partnered with the university because they know they need outside influence and outside thought. And I can share the link on their stuff on the website at the moment.
And just another couple of examples, I would split into two. There's kind of the generalized mod, so just using things like Copilot or ChatGPT to create a different culture and change the way that project's done. And then you've got the vertical solutions, some of which you've talked about for very specific use cases. I'll give you one example is there's a company called Nplan out there who have trained on, I think, 50,000 different schedules. And they've got a product called Schedule Studio. And it's a bit, imagine ChatGPT, but for schedules. So you upload your project information, your brief, you can talk to it. From that, it produces a work breakdown structure. Really importantly, the human's in the loop with it, so you can actually adjust things. And then eventually you get a schedule, which you can then export out into P6. It's quite interesting because rather than using that first, the initial kind of estimate of a schedule based on gut feel, you're using it based on 150,000 other real life schedules. So that's just one other example, but there's plenty out there actually.
And so just to add to that as well, in terms of there is a lot of startups doing really, really intelligent stuff. It's sort of in isolation. And I think what's really important is to understand what's the real need of your business, where are the real pain points, and then focus in on those. Because I think there is a lot of new, I think you can get overwhelmed with it, the amount of new sort of startups that've got investment funding that have got an AI tool to solve X. And it's really fantastic, but is X really what you need? Your example with the Black & Decker drill in the hole, if you're just looking for a hole, do you need an AI tool or do you just need a Black & Decker?
And I think it is overwhelming because there's so many startups out there, and there will be some kind of consolidation in the future. I can understand why it's very, very difficult to choose some of these tools sometimes. You don't want to be the guinea pig with a lot of them, but a lot of them have got free trials, and there's not huge investment needed to do a trial. Like I said before, experimentations I think is a really good way of just getting started.
Hi, Prativa, City of London. I oversee construction projects from a client side. So I want to understand the legal implication of AI, and especially how I can trust what's been recommended to me, because so that's my question.
Do you want me to take that based on what I've done with the RICS? So, because that was exactly the kind of concern the RICS had in terms of making sure they're managing their members. And the standard has provoked a lot of debate, which is good, as I said, but it was trying to address that concern. For a chartered surveyor, what does it mean? And it will be the same for chartered architects and everything else. And basically it comes down to a really simple principle, actually, which is, that IBM slide from 1979 that I showed still holds true. Never let an AI make a decision for you. So if you're employing whoever it is, a chartered surveyor, they have to take responsibility for that output. So that it's no good, you can't have a situation where you say, well, the AI told me that, therefore it's not me. It's a way of improving productivity, but it's not a replacement for professional awareness and professional requirements. And I think if you hold true to that kind of methodology, you won't go too far wrong. At some point in the future, that might change, right, when we reach this artificial general intelligence. But we're not there, at least not for the next few years. So for now, that's why the RICS did this standard, was to make members understand that the implications exactly the same. This is not an excuse. You can use AI to improve your productivity, improve the value to your client, but it's not for you to say, it's got it wrong, it's nothing to do with me.
One question connected to that is, has the dispute resolution on the legal system sort of, are they uplifting their standards to kind of help us with decisions?
So there was, I think, a couple of years back, I think it was when ChatGPT was just released, there was a famous case where an American lawyer asked the question to ChatGPT and it just generated fake case law because it does that thing where it hallucinates. It just wants to be helpful. It just gives you information. And obviously that was picked up, and from there all law firms have understood that it's not just blindly ask information, oh great, put it in my case. It's understanding what questions do I actually need to answer, ask the questions, and then how do I vet it? How do I ensure that the human's always in the loop and it's not just a blind chatbot speaking to a chatbot? So yeah, law firms have definitely realised we need to have a policy on this, because if people are out there just asking questions and getting rubbish back, then we're going to have no end of problems. So I think I did mention it, but it's really critical to have a policy for your business, is understanding what are the rules. So a clear rule would be humans always in the loop, that anything that a ChatGPT or any other system creates gets vetted before it goes out to a client or gets used in any business operations.
I think we had one other question.
Yeah, so obviously a lot of what Gareth and leads, so a lot of what you've been talking about is construction. The biggest blockers we know in our industry is government and bureaucracy. and government. What is being done? Does the government actually understand that they are actually the blocker? So they do all this AI stuff, but the biggest blocker to get stuff built is governance, bureaucracy. So how is AI, are government using AI to actually try and unlock that? Or have they not added two and two together yet?
When we get there, I think we really have reached AGI, haven't we, where we can unblock the government.
I do a lot of work with the government on the communication side, and I'd say that they're probably one of the most progressive clients we have with AI, and that does come from Cabinet Office. I can't talk to how quickly they're going to try and push policy through and get things through the Commons and into the House of Lords, but they are taking AI very, very seriously at the moment. The problem is, and I think it's the same with the legal point, our systems don't move quickly enough for the technology, which is moving faster than we've ever seen before. The regulators can't keep up, the laws can't keep up, the bureaucracies can't keep up. So where that goes, I'm not sure. I think at some point something breaks and that makes it kind of change, but it's hard to say.
And I think different parts of the government have different experiences with. So NISTA, who were the IPA, they've actually released things saying like AI and data on project delivery. It's not a mandate, but it basically says you should be using AI to improve our project delivery. Won't stop all the bureaucracy, but there are things in place to try and of course the AI action plan, one of the recommendations within that is to unblock some of these blockers. It won't happen overnight, but I think it's improving.
It's a big challenge at the moment with any resi developer trying to get through gateway submissions. Building safety regulators are just overloaded because they've got all these applications. There's no consistency, they're just getting bundles of information and they've got to analyse it. In theory, that sounds like perfect work for AI to make sense of loads of information. You've got a building regulation that you need to compare against and highlight where it's red, amber, green, what's going to get passed. Whether they're doing it and whether they're realising this is what they need to start doing, I don't know the answer to that, but you can see how AI could potentially unlock all of these bottlenecks and just problems where you've got one person checking resi developments for half of London. It just doesn't work anymore.
What's the most amazing thing you've seen AI do?
I mean, there's two things that I'm constantly amazed by. One, how good it is at coding. Like, honestly, anyone in this room could code up a website or a mobile app just with a single prompt. Like, this stuff is amazing now. And I think there's still a big penny drop moment for a lot of people where they can think that they could do that and then even just try it. And I think that's going to change a lot of things. When people can just code up websites and interactive things and applications within seconds, that'll kind of change the game a lot. The other one that I'm really interested in at the moment, we're doing a lot of research around how we can use AI for like consumer insights and understanding how people think and behave. It's really good for that, and that's kind of weird because it's not human, but it's kind of accurately predicting what humans think and do, which is quite weird.
There were two sort of jaw-drop moments for me. The first one was what you mentioned, the deep research. Like the first time I used deep research, anyone who hasn't used that, it's free. Just try. You can get like weeks and weeks of research done in 20 minutes. And when you first experience it, you realise all the citations, everything there. That's like a real jaw drop. The other one was the first time I used one of these agents. There's one within ChatGPT, but there's another one that I use a lot called Manus, where you literally go off and you see it going off doing things, taking over websites and bringing things together and performing a task for you. And you look at it and you think, that would have taken me, I don't know, 3 or 4 days to do. So those were two kind of jaw drop moments I remember.
Yeah, in a similar vein, I was doing a research project with HSC looking at how to sort of digitise risk registers and how to use AI. And just going, okay, we've got this risk on a job, and basically blocking off the ChatGPTs that only had reference points from HSC manuals, just saying, if we've got this risk, what's a typical other risk that may be on the project, and how would you treat it, or how would you put mitigations in place? And it's that sort of, like I said, it's that deep research. It's taking a problem and spending what would take yourself, 20 minutes, 30 minutes going, okay, let's have a think about that, and getting it in seconds. That's the thing where I think it's just, really jaw-dropping, and you go, wow, yeah, I can see why this is getting all the buzz.
Coming.
Project Flux is here.
That's a wrap for today's episode. But before you go, exciting news. Project Flux is teaming up with Project Management Global to bring you the latest in AI-driven project delivery and essential management insights. Through this partnership, expect weekly AI insights, practical tools, and expert thought leadership, ensuring you stay ahead in the evolving project landscape. Stay tuned for exclusive content, joint research and strategies to supercharge your project outcomes. You can learn more at www.pm-global.co.uk and be part of the future of project management. See you later.
Project Flux is here.
Just want to give a big shout out to our sponsors, Construct AI. For anyone interested in looking at Construct AI, the link's in our show notes. There's a free tier that you can play around with. Yoshi and I have been using it for a good year since it was originally launched, and we get a huge amount of value out of it. So I thoroughly encourage everyone to go onto the Construct AI site and have a play around.
Cool. And guys, before we sign off, please don't forget to share, follow, and like all of our stuff. So that helps us to engage with you and understand a bit more about what you want so we can bring it to your doorstep as early as possible.
See you later, everyone.